Tensions remain high on the Israeli-Gaza border as 10 rockets hit southern Israel in the last 2 hours, and retaliatory airstrikes are set to continue as Jerusalem, too, remains on edge after yesterday's riots. Egypt marks 1 year since the ousting of Mohamed Morsi as Cairo's Tahrir Square is put under heavy security. And fighting resumes in eastern Ukraine as 9 people are allegedly killed by Ukrainian special forces. Good evening. You're watching i24 News. We begin with the escalation along Israel's border with the Gaza Strip. Israel is sending reinforcements to the Gaza border ahead of a possible ground operation. This after the Israeli Air Force attacked terror sites in the Gaza Strip today following a barrage of rocket attacks on Israel, which has continued throughout the day. Over 26 rockets were fired from Gaza in the last 24 hours, 10 of them in the last 2 hours. One rocket hit a kindergarten in the town of Sderot, but caused no injuries. 2 rockets were intercepted by the Iron Dome anti-missile system. Meanwhile, at least 10 Palestinians were reported injured by the Israeli airstrikes, which the Israeli military says targeted concealed rocket launchers and weapons storage facilities. Now, a short while ago, the Ezzedine al-Qassam brigades, the military wing of Hamas, warned Israel to halt its Gaza airstrikes and widespread West Bank arrests.
The enemy's threat of war on Gaza are threats that do not mean anything in our vocabulary. They are just meaning that the time for our revenge is coming closer. We will not permit nor accept from anyone that someone asks us to control ourselves and keep Gaza under control. Nobody gives us orders, and we only protect our people and defend our land.
Meanwhile, Jerusalem remained calm today, but still on edge after a full day of riots yesterday sparked by the murder of a Palestinian teenager in what the Palestinians claim was a revenge attack for the kidnap and murder of 3 Israeli teens 3 weeks ago. Meanwhile, a large Israeli police force has been deployed in the Shuafat neighborhood in East Jerusalem and in other flashpoints across the city. We go live now to our correspondent, Shachar Peled, who is at the scene. Shachar, good evening. Yesterday, where you're standing was a scene of violent riots. What was the situation today?
Yes, good evening. It was relatively a peaceful day here in East Jerusalem. We're in the neighborhood of Shuafat. Earlier today, there were some clashes between local residents and police forces. We know that 1 policeman was injured. But in the past couple of hours following the iftar dinner, we are in the month of Ramadan, and breaking the fast following the iftar dinner, there were expected to be more clashes and the next escalation. Great forces, security forces of the Israeli IDF and police were scattered around the area, but other than some trash cans being torched, we did not see any escalation here in this region. The police forces have been moving on in the past hour, and so far it remains peaceful, it remains calm, but it still remains to be seen what will happen tomorrow. Tomorrow afternoon, the funeral of 16-year-old Mohammed Abu Khudair is scheduled following the prayers of the first Friday of Ramadan, and hopefully the area will remain calm, but still heavy police forces are expected to escort the service.
Yes, there are tensions expected tomorrow. Shachar Peled, thank you for updating us from East Jerusalem. Meanwhile, a new Palestinian jihadist group which just pledged allegiance to the Islamic State, formerly known as ISIL, is now claiming responsibility for the killing of 3 Israeli teenagers last month. Hamas continues to deny responsibility for the murders. In a statement posted on jihadi websites Tuesday, the supporters of the Islamic State in Bayat al-Maqdis said it was responsible for the capture and killing of what they call, quote, the 3 soldiers in Hebron. They also claimed responsibility for sniper attacks in Hebron and Tarkumia, as well as the missile launches from Gaza into Israel that occurred a month and a half ago. And we are joined by i24 News correspondent Ellie Hockenberg, who is in Sderot covering these events. We hear that sirens are continuing to go off in the town. What's the latest, Ellie?
Well, Meredith, the evening is definitely intensified. We're talking about 15 mortar shells and rockets landing in Israeli territory during the last hour only. So we're no longer talking about escalation. It is an escalation. There is a deterioration in the current situation, and we have one soldier lightly injured. We had fire arrows following the rockets landing. So and we constantly can hear red siren alerts in different spots in southern Israel. So we are talking about a very intensive evening here, and for the last 24 hours, Meredith, over 35 rockets. So we can only expect further deterioration, and we will of course keep you updated from here later on.
Ellie Hockenberg, thank you for joining us. And tonight on i24 News Special Edition, Lucia Harish sat down with Palestinian chief negotiator Dr. Saeb Erekat. In his Ramallah office, a top Palestinian official discussed the current crisis with Israel and then went behind the scenes of the 9-month peace talks, which ended with a deadlock.
The key element here is to put a map on the table and to delineate the borders. The Israeli government refuses this utterly. I negotiated with them for 9 months. And during these 9 months, they added 50,000 settlers to the existing settler population in the West Bank and East Jerusalem. Why are you doing this to me? Why are you weakening me? Why, if we're going to make agreement, at the end of the day, it's not going to be Americans or Europeans that will make the decisions and concessions required. It's going to be Palestinians and Israelis. We need to be strengthening each other. This is the truth. Israel has not finished its labor pain. We don't have a partner in Israel saying, I accept the state of Palestine right to live in peace and security on the 1967 lines.
And staying in the Middle East, in Cairo today, Egyptian authorities stepped up security and shut down Tahrir Square in preparation for demonstrations called for by an alliance supporting ousted President Mohamed Morsi. Today marks the first anniversary of the ouster of Muslim Brotherhood's president by former Army Chief Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, who has since become president himself. Here's more from i24 News reporter Danny Swibel.
Thursday marks the first anniversary of the ouster of Muslim Brotherhood's Mohamed Morsi by former Army Chief Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, who has since become president himself following elections last month. Al-Sisi removed Morsi from office after mass protests against his rule. Morsi's year in office was tarnished by allegations that he usurped power, imposed the Brotherhood's views on society, and mismanaged the economy. Many do not believe any progress will be made throughout the nation in spite of the recent power shifts.
We don't see any change. We haven't seen any change in the past 30 years or the past 35 years. Neither will we see any change in the next 100 years.
Some Egyptians feel stability is first needed for any real change and believe President al-Sisi is the right man to take the country forward.
Egypt needs a military man to fix things. It won't do having a normal person rule the country. There's control over Tahrir now since al-Sisi became president. We're optimistic and we hope to God that the country will get better.
The right to protest has been sharply restricted by a law passed after Morsi's fall last year. Around 23 activists rallying against the protest law were arrested just last week in Cairo.
And we move now to Ukraine, where pro-Russian rebels blame the Ukrainian army for an attack on the eastern village of Luhansk, which resulted in at least 9 civilians killed. Kiev denied being behind the attack and instead said the rebels were responsible for violence in the village. A ceasefire called by Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko was short-lived, ending Monday as fighting intensified between pro-Russian rebels and Ukrainian forces. Meanwhile, in Donetsk, 3 policemen were gunned down in the middle of the street this morning. Another policeman was severely injured. The reasons behind the shootings were not immediately clear. Meanwhile, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov called on Western powers to play a decisive role in reaching a solution in Ukraine.
To implement a declaration that was adopted yesterday in Berlin, I think our Western colleagues should play a decisive role. They should convince the Kiev authorities to follow the provisions included in the declaration. The provisions include the task of holding a meeting of the contact group as soon as possible to agree on a bilateral basis on a sustainable and lasting ceasefire.
And that's all for now. Join us again in 20 minutes for the latest breaking news. Thank you for watching.